I had already signed the transfer papers 6 months before my mother showed up at my door, demanding I hand over everything I had built. She did not knock. She never knocked. She walked in the way she always did, like the mortgage payment had her name on it. It was 11:30 on a Tuesday night in February, and the temperature outside had dropped to -22 with the wind chill. I could hear the ice cracking on the tree branches outside my window. She stood in my entryway in her good wool coat, the charcoal one she wore when she wanted to be taken seriously, and she placed a document on my kitchen counter the way a judge drops a gavel. "Your sister needs you to co-sign," she said. "Tonight." I looked at the paper. It was a second mortgage application for my condo. My sister had apparently decided that her restaurant in Kensington Market, the one that had been hemorrhaging money since the day it opened, deserved one more chance. The application was already half filled out in my mother's handwriting. All it needed was my signature on 3 lines, highlighted in yellow. I looked at my mother. I looked at the paper. Then I walked to the closet by my front door, reached into the inside pocket of my winter jacket, and pulled out a thin envelope. Inside was a single card, the spare access card to the property management office downstairs, the one that looked nearly identical to my building's master fob. The one that opened nothing of consequence. I held it out to her. "Take it," I said. "I've been meaning to return it anyway." She snatched it without looking at it properly. She was already reaching for her phone to call my sister. She had no idea that the only document worth anything in this situation, the certificate of title to this condo, had been registered in my name alone at the Ontario Land Registry Office since last August. She had no idea that I had anticipated this exact moment for 3 years. She thought she had just won. She always thought she had just won. She left without saying goodbye. She rarely did. I stood in my kitchen for a long time after the door closed. The refrigerator hummed. The heating vent clicked. Outside, a snowplow ground its way down the street. I did not feel victorious yet. I felt the particular exhaustion of someone who has been running a very long race and can finally see the finish line, but knows the hardest part is still ahead. I was born in 1995, the year my parents moved to Brampton from Halifax, and my father's small contracting business finally started making money. My sister arrived 3 years later, right around the same time my father landed his first major commercial contract. My mother has always believed in signs. She decided, with the conviction of someone who has never questioned their own logic, that my sister was good luck, and I was the reason for every difficult year that came before. Growing up, this belief expressed itself quietly at first. My sister got the bedroom with the bigger closet. My sister's report cards were displayed on the fridge. Mine were filed away. When my grandmother, on my father's side, passed away during my first year at Ryerson, she left a handwritten note with her estate, saying she wanted me to have her pearl and garnet brooch, the one she had brought from Portugal. It was old and modest and worth almost nothing financially, but I had loved it my entire childhood. I found it 6 weeks after the funeral pinned to the lapel of my sister's coat when she left for a party I was not invited to. My mother's explanation, delivered without looking up from the television, was that my sister had an event to attend and needed something elegant, and that I had never shown any interest in jewelry anyway. I learned that day that possessions did not belong to me just because they were given to me. In my mother's world, everything I owned was simply held in trust, until my sister needed it more. I called this, later when I was old enough to name things properly, the inheritance redirect. It is a specific kind of theft, practiced by parents who have decided, consciously or not, that one child exists to resource the other. They do not think of it as stealing. They think of it as family. They believe that love means pooling, that what is yours is the family's, and that the family has needs you should be proud to meet. What they do not tell you is that the pooling only ever flows one direction. By the time I was 25, I had a college diploma in accounting, a job at a mid-size firm in downtown Toronto, and a plan. I had been saving since I was 19. I had a TFSA maxed out, a decent RRSP, and enough for a down payment on a 1-bedroom in Etobicoke. Not glamorous. Not the Annex or Leslieville, but mine. Completely, legally, solely mine. My mother co-signed the original mortgage because my debt-to-income ratio was 4 points short of qualifying a loan. I presented it to her as a favor she was doing me. I did not tell her what I was already planning. I did not tell her that 18 months after we signed those documents, I would refinance through a different lender, qualify on my own, and file the paperwork to remove her from the title entirely. I did not tell her that my real estate lawyer had walked me through exactly how to do this, or that my mother's signature on the refinancing agreement, the one she signed at the kitchen table while watching a cooking show, the one I told her was just a standard rate adjustment, had legally surrendered her interest in the property. She had signed it the same way she signed everything she did not want to bother reading. Quickly, in the wrong corner of the page, with a flourish that said, "I trust you, but not really." She trusted me the way powerful people trust the people they underestimate. So when she arrived at my door that February night with a mortgage application and the absolute certainty that I would hand over the equity in my home to fund my sister's third attempt at a business, She was operating on information that was 3 years out of date. The card I gave her opened the recycling room in the basement. I made myself a cup of tea. I sat at my kitchen table. I opened my laptop and I waited. She called at 7 the next morning. I let it ring twice. "The bank says you need to come in and sign the actual mortgage documents in person," she said, before I had finished saying hello. Her voice had that particular flatness it always had when things had not gone according to her expectations, but she was not yet ready to acknowledge that. "I know," I said. "Your sister needs this by end of week." "I understand." There was a pause. She was waiting for the apology, the capitulation, the familiar sound of me folding myself smaller to fit the shape she required. "I'll be there Thursday," I said instead. "Text me the address." She did not say thank you. She hung up. I sat with the phone in my hand for a moment. Then I opened my email and forwarded 3 attachments to my personal lawyer. The first was a screenshot of a wire transfer made 4 months ago, when my mother had used the joint checking account we shared for one transitional billing period during the refinancing to transfer $4,300 to my sister. The second was a voicemail she had left me in October, asking me to just let the restaurant use your business number for tax purposes. Just until they get sorted. It won't affect you. The third was the registered title document confirming my sole ownership of the condo as of August the previous year. My lawyer's response came in 11 minutes. "See you Thursday." The mortgage broker's office was in a low-glass building near Yorkdale, the kind of office that tries to feel welcoming with potted plants and water dispensers but succeeds only at feeling expensive. My mother was already there when I arrived. She was wearing the charcoal wool coat again. My sister sat beside her in an oversized sweater, dark circles under her eyes, the particular hollow look she always had when a plan was unraveling and she hadn't accepted it yet. There was a fourth person in the room I had not expected. A man in his late 50s with the very still quality of someone who is accustomed to being the most dangerous person in any room he enters. He was introduced to me as a private investor who had already extended $40,000 to my sister's restaurant on the expectation that the property equity would secure the loan. My mother did not look at me when this was explained. She looked at the table. This was how I knew she was afraid. The mortgage broker, a tired-looking woman named Miss Okafor, slid a folder across the table. Inside was the full application. 3 highlighted lines. A pen. "We just need your signature as co-signer," Miss Okafor said. "And as co-owner," my mother added, without inflection. I set my bag on the table. I took out 2 documents and placed them side by side. "I'm not a co-owner," I said. I watched my mother's face process this slowly, the way a computer processes a command it was not programmed to receive. "Of course you are. I co-signed the original mortgage." "You did," I said. "And then I refinanced in 2023. Your name was removed from the title at that time." I turned the first document toward her. "This is the registered certificate of title from the Ontario Land Registry. My name only. Registered August 14th, 2023. The investor shifted very slightly in his chair. "That's not possible," my mother said. "I would have known." "You signed the refinancing paperwork at your kitchen table," I said. I explained that the new lender required the co-signer to be released to qualify for the preferred rate. "You signed the title transfer in the same package." I thought that was just a rate form. The document was labeled, "Transfer of Title," in 14-point font, above the signature line. She had no answer for this. She was staring at the paper the way people stare at something they cannot reconcile with their understanding of reality. My sister made a sound, something between a word and an exhale, and I turned to the second document. "This is a printout of 4 months of transaction history from the joint account that was active during the refinancing period," I said. "On October 3rd, $4,300 was transferred from that account to my sister's restaurant operating account. I did not authorize that transfer. I was not informed of it. The account was linked to my SIN number." Miss Okafor was no longer looking at the mortgage application. She was looking at the investor. The investor was looking at my mother. "Deborah," he said. "Just her name. Nothing else." My mother straightened in her chair. I recognized this movement. It was her pivot, the moment she decided the best defense was a new story. She looked at me with the expression she always wore when she was about to rewrite events in real time. "Aurora took that money herself," she said, her voice level, almost sympathetic. "She has been draining the family accounts for years. I have tried to protect my younger daughter from knowing the full extent of it." She turned to Miss Okafor. "This is exactly why I brought her here today. I wanted a professional present when I confronted her. It was, I had to admit, a very good performance. She had delivered it without a single hesitation." I reached into my bag one more time. "I have a recording of the voicemail my mother left me in October," I said, "in which she asks me to allow the restaurant to file under my business registration number for tax purposes. I also have 3 years of text messages in which she refers to my condo as our property and discusses equity access on my sister's behalf. And I have spoken this morning with an officer at the CRA's Leads program. who confirmed they opened a file last week after receiving an anonymous tip about a business using a personal SIN as a primary tax identifier without the account holder's consent. The room was quiet, in a way rooms rarely are. I had submitted that tip myself, 11 days ago, from a public computer at the Etobicoke Library. Miss Okafor closed the mortgage folder. The investor stood up. He buttoned his jacket. He looked at my mother with an expression that had no warmth in it at all. "You told me the property was jointly held," he said. "You told me you could secure the loan." "She changed the paperwork without telling me," my mother said. Her voice had a new quality now, something thinner underneath the composure. "She was supposed to. You accepted $40,000, he said quietly, "against an asset you don't own." He picked up his coat from the back of the chair. "I'll need that back. All of it. With the arrangement fee." He looked at my sister. By the end of the month, my sister started to cry. The tears came very suddenly, the way they always had, like a faucet with a sensitive handle. When we were children, those tears had ended every argument in her favor. They had returned the sapphire brooch. They had bought extensions on every deadline, excuses for every cruelty, second and third and fourth chances, that my mother dispensed with the confidence of someone who believed love was measured in second chances given to the right child. The tears did not stop the investor from leaving. My mother turned to me. Her composure was gone now, and what was underneath it was something I had seen only once or twice in my life, the raw face she wore when she had run out of versions of herself to present. "You planned this," she said. I did not deny it. "You let us walk into this room knowing you were going to do this." "You walked into this room to commit fraud," I said. I kept my voice even. "You brought a private investor, who has $40,000 on the line, and a mortgage broker as witnesses to your plan to forge a co-signature on a property I solely own, using an asset you had already misrepresented to that investor. I didn't plan that part. You did. I am your mother." 3 words. She had always believed those 3 words were a form of legal immunity. "You are," I said. "And for 29 years I paid that debt in full. I paid it with the brooch. I paid it with 4 years of covering the family's phone bill when your business wasn't doing well. I paid it with the down payment loan I never asked to be repaid, and the tax returns I filed for free, and the move I helped your sister do twice, and the morning I sat across from you in a hospital waiting room for 6 hours when you had your procedure, and I had a project deadline and I never said a word about it. I folded the documents and placed them in my bag. The account is settled. I don't know anything more." She had nothing to say to this. I think it was the specificity that stopped her. She had expected grief, or anger, or the particular wounded sound I had been making all my life to signal that I was still available for reconciliation. She had not expected accounting. Miss Okafor stood. She said something professional and neutral about how she would not be able to proceed with the application and offered everyone a card in case they needed referrals to other services. The kind of sentence you learn to say when you witness things in your office that you cannot comment on directly. I picked up my coat from the back of my chair. It was heavier than I remembered. Or maybe I just noticed the weight of it more now. My sister grabbed my arm as I stood. Her grip was tighter than I expected. She had her mother's eyes, dark and direct, and in that moment they were entirely clear, the tears already absorbed into some internal accounting. "You knew the whole time," she said. "Since before the restaurant." "I knew since the brooch," I said. I did not say it to wound her. I said it because it was true. And because she was old enough to know that the truth is not the same thing as punishment. She let go of my arm. I walked out into the February cold. The parking lot was gray and packed with dirty snow, the kind that accumulates on the edges of Canadian winter and refuses to leave until April. My breath made a small cloud ahead of me. I pressed the key fob, and my car beeped twice from 3 rows over. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was my lawyer. "Confirmed title is clear. CRA file number attached. Call me when you're ready to discuss the unauthorized account access claim." I sat in my car for a moment before starting it. The heater kicked on with its familiar low rattle. I had owned this car for 3 years, paid for it in full, and no one in my family had ever asked to borrow it because it was a 2019 Civic with a small dent above the rear wheel, and my mother found it embarrassing to be seen in it. That small fact in this moment felt like a gift. I put the car in reverse and backed out carefully. The street beyond the parking lot was full of the ordinary noise of a Thursday morning in the city. A bus pulled away from the stop at the corner. 2 men in construction vests stood drinking coffee from Tim Hortons cups outside a building site. The light at the intersection turned green, then yellow, then red. I thought about the apartment I had been looking at in the annex, a 2-bedroom, with a second room I had been considering for a home office. The realtor had said the sellers were motivated. I had made no decisions yet. I thought about my sister. I thought about the specific loneliness of the golden child when the gold finally runs out. When the person designated to keep producing it simply stops. I did not think about it with satisfaction. I thought about it the way you think about weather. Something true. Something that was going to require its own set of adjustments. I thought about my mother standing in that office with her composure dismantled, holding a title document that had been registered for 6 months without her knowledge, and I did not feel the grief I had spent years anticipating when I imagined this moment. I felt, instead, a kind of geological stillness, the feeling of bedrock after a long excavation. My phone rang as I merged onto the 401. I checked the display. My mother. He let it ring. Not from anger, not from strategy, simply because I did not have anything left to say that would be useful to either of us, and I had learned, slowly and at considerable cost, that not every call requires an answer. I turned the heat up one notch. Outside, the winter sun was doing its weak February best, low and white over the flat stretch of highway that runs through the top of the city like a seam. The road was clear. Traffic was moving. I had nowhere specific to be until 4 o'clock. I drove. Have you ever stayed silent not because you were afraid, but because you finally understood that your silence was the one thing they couldn't take from you? Leave your story in the comments below. And if you believe that walking away is sometimes the strongest move you'll ever make, hit that like button.